I might read them out. With my panel here on Dewbs & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening to you. Now, as I speak, it is the first DFS event of the winter. No, I'm not referring to the perpetual surface sale, but rather the demand flexibility service from the National Grid. Do you know what that is? Well, if you've got a smart meter and you turn some of your appliances off right now, not your telly, obviously, you could be earning some cash. I'm asking, is this the future, do you reckon, when it comes to energy saving? And speaking of energy, is it time to means test the winter fuel allowance? Controversial, I know. And Ursula von der Leyen said that the young should fix Brexit by basically returning us back to the EU. So should the young get another vote on the issue sometime in the near future? And when? What would it look like? And I also want to ask, should it be harder for companies to hire overseas workers? And last but not least, there seems to be some odd goings-on, doesn't there, when it comes to how Nigel Farage is being portrayed in the jungle. Why? I will be getting stuck into all of that, but before I do, let's cross live to Polly Middlehurst for tonight's latest news headlines.
Michelle, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the top story from the GB Newsroom is that the Israeli Prime Minister has said today his country will continue to fight Hamas until the end, despite the pause in fighting. Israel and Hamas have been negotiating an extension to the humanitarian truce, which would see the exchange of men or military personnel, not just women and children. Benjamin Netanyahu repeated that Israel is resolute in its intention to destroy the Hamas terror group.
There is no situation where we won't go back to fighting until the end. This is my policy. The entire cabinet is behind it, the entire government's behind it, the soldiers are behind it, and our people are behind it. This is exactly what we will do.
The Israeli Prime Minister speaking earlier on today. Well, in news here at home, Sir Keir Starmer says the government is to blame for record migration numbers, as he promised to scrap laws that allow workers from overseas to be paid less than British workers. The Prime Minister and the Labour leader clashed during Prime Minister's questions today, with Sir Keir reminding MPs of the government's promise to reduce legal migration back in 2019. Rishi Sunak conceded that immigration levels are still too high, but he insisted the number is coming down.
It's really a bit rich to hear about this from someone who described all immigration law as racist, who literally said it was a mistake to control immigration. We have taken steps and we will take further steps, which is why recent estimates of immigration show that it's slowing. It's why next year the immigration health surcharge will increase by over 2/3. It's why immigration fees are going up by up to 35%.
Rishi Sunak. Now, a new research project aims to end all new transmissions of HIV in England by 2030. It's going to see a so-called opt-out HIV testing in A&E departments increased in a bid to detect the virus in people who might not otherwise, England, are believed to be living with the virus without knowing. Health and Social Care Secretary Victoria Atkins says it is an important step towards eradicating HIV.
This announcement today, rolling out these important blood tests across a further 46 areas, it will really help to drive up diagnoses of HIV. And we've seen from the scheme that has already rolled out across the highest prevalence areas that thousands of people can be helped with these early diagnoses, and then they can be given the support and the medical treatment they need to lead not just longer lives but also high quality lives. And so I'm really excited that Birmingham and 45 other areas are going to be helping patients locally understand their health needs and how we can help treat them.
Nottingham City Council says it is in severe financial distress and is therefore unable to deliver a balanced budget. The council has issued a Section 114 notice. That's the same measure taken by Birmingham Council in September. East Midlands reporter Will Hollis says all new spending will be frozen for the authority, but measures will be put in place which protect vulnerable people.
Nottingham City Council has today announced that it cannot balance its budget, and the Chief Financial Officer has issued a Section 114 notice effectively declaring bankruptcy. That means that the Labour-led authority from today can only spend money on statutory services. Those are things like education, for roads, for children's services. Now the council must meet within 21 days to discuss what measures they will be putting in place. The council has already spent a number of years struggling with its finances, and today it has really come to a head.
Will Hollis. Now, a 13-year-old boy has been handed a 2-year sentence for killing his foster mother with her own car outside her home. Marcia Grant, who was also a grandmother, was killed in Sheffield in April this year by the teenager, who can't be named for legal reasons. Prosecutors said there was no evidence he'd intended to harm Mrs. Grant and that his intention was to drive away. The teenager pleaded guilty to causing death by dangerous driving in October.
Since Marcia's death, our thoughts have been with her family and friends after she was taken from them in the most difficult of circumstances. Marcia was a wife, mother, grandmother, friend and a pillar of her community. Her death has had a profound effect on everybody who loved her. Although the criminal justice process has concluded today, I am aware that this brings no resolution or closure for Marcia's friends and family.
Representative of South Yorkshire Police ending that report. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Thanks for that, Polly. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me. A returning face, the PR guru Kevin Craig, and also alongside him, the Conservative commentator Alex Dean, also PR guru. What a treat for us tonight, ladies and gents, not least because towards the end of the programme, I do want to ask about Brand Nigel. Some would call him the next Prime Minister, some would call him someone they never want to see ever again. He divides opinion. But what's going on with the way he's been represented in the jungle? I'll get onto that before the end of the programme. And you know the drill on here, don't you? It's not just about us three. It is about you guys at home. What's on your mind tonight? You can get in touch all the usual ways, gbviews@gbnews.com, or you can tweet me at GB News. I'll tell you something that's on my mind briefly, something I saw on Twitter just before I came on air. If you use Twitter or X or whatever it is, you might have seen me tweet about this. It is a tweet from Visit Britain. They are the official tourist board of Great Britain. They've got a lovely picture, so they have. They say Tower Bridge, dressed to impress for the holidays, with a lovely Christmassy image. And I just want to say to Visit Britain, I think the word that you're looking for there is Christmas. Christmas. I'll say it one last time for those at the back that are hard of hearing. It's not the holidays, it is Christmas. I'd also say to that brand as well, you might want to update your imagery because you used that exact same picture 3 years ago on your Twitter feed. Surely you can update it and get your naming right at the same time, can't you? Am I asking too much? I don't know. You get in touch and tell me. Anyway, DFS, I was mentioning at the start of this programme because for the next, 20-something minutes now, you, ladies and gents, you have a fantastic opportunity to earn some money. Do not get too excited, though, because it's kind of pennies, really, as opposed to pounds. It's all about, basically, you being encouraged to turn off your appliances. Definitely not your telly, definitely not your radio, definitely not your computer. You can carry on watching this programme, but it's stuff like your washing machines, I don't know if you've got big immersion heaters or whatever, it's those kind of things. And it's all about the surge of us wanting to use energy in these cold moments. Apparently, 1 million households have signed up so far. You have to have a smart meter, by the way, for this to take effect. Do you think this is a good initiative, Alex?
I think there's nothing wrong with people being paid by their suppliers to have their equipment turned off in their home if they choose to, because there's nothing compelling them to do so at the moment. The bigger issue here for me, and the revealing thing about it, is that there's not enough capacity in our power system. There's not enough provision available, and there's not enough spare availability. Now, it's our fault as a country. We haven't invested enough. We haven't built enough nuclear power stations. We haven't got enough gas stations, which is the bridging facility for the future. And renewables, whilst a vital part of the mix and a vital part of the future, just aren't up to enough reliability yet, and are still, many of them, too expensive to make up for what we need. And, of course, there's been an element of over-promising on the side of what we can get from renewables. In the future, in the long term, absolutely. But right now, we need a lot of everything, unless we want to import a lot from abroad. And I'm afraid this demonstrates that we haven't invested enough in our capacity. I don't mind people being paid pennies to turn off their appliances, but really, we shouldn't be in a position where we need to.
I'll come back to you on that one. But for you, and this financial incentive, is it a good idea?
I think it's great. I mean, I read earlier today that you could save £8 by not using a tumble dryer.
Right.
I mean, that all adds up.
But would you use a tumble dryer? I'm too tight to use one.
Are you?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, that's not everyone's like that, are they? Is it because you're from Hull?
I don't know what it is. I am really reluctant to use a tumble dryer.
I mean, carers in Hull.
My fellow Hollensians out there.
You know what I mean? Interruption to your broadcast.
I don't use a tumble dryer, and I do think it is because I'm tight. I make no bones about that. No, just tight, I can't lie. Right. So I'm always surprised when people do use them. It's quite frivolous to me. But anyway, this whole notion that if you wear a tumble dryer user and you're not for the next 20 minutes or so, is this the future, that you're going to save a couple of quid or a couple of bob?
I think it is. I think it's good. I think every to use somebody else's slogan, every little helps. It is done elsewhere in the world and has been successful. And I'd agree with Alex that there is a broader debate about energy availability, but this is just common sense. The interesting thing is that over 1 million people have signed up, so it means there's public interest.
Are you one of them? Are you sitting there now? You've turned your tumble dryer off, not for tightness, but because you're trying to get this rebate or whatever we want to call it. Are you one of them? Tell me about it. Let's talk then about this energy, lack of domestic energy supply and why we're in this mess.
Well, I mean, there's a few well-discussed reasons on this programme. The war in Ukraine, lack of capacity, the weather. They've all added up at the moment to create particularly challenging, conditions.
Yeah, but that's because but things like the war in Ukraine pushing up the prices because of the demand. That would be irrelevant if we had our own domestic supply of energy.
Well, this is why I'm very enthusiastic about the Labour Party's plans for energy, which will make us less reliant on energy from tyrants like Putin.
But you're also very anti the policy that I'm sure you will champion, which is the licensing of new oil and gas licences to help us become more domestically secure.
Yeah, there's very few policies, if you think about it, that really put, no pun intended, on the North Sea, clear blue water between the parties at the moment. Labour is very keen to maintain its poll lead and not rock the boat, and therefore avoid saying things that are too different from the status quo. I'm sure we'll see lots coming out with manifestos and so forth, but that's the broad Labour position at the moment. One of the things they have taken a firm position on, and I think it's a mistake, just in purely pragmatic terms, politically, as well as in terms of energy activity, is saying they wouldn't grant any more new North Sea licences. First of all, I think it's a mistake for the reason Kevin has mentioned, that we make ourselves less dependent, whether it be the Middle East or regimes like Russia, the more we have ourselves. But secondly, if you're looking to exploit the unprecedented collapse of the SNP, which is a remarkable political phenomenon we probably don't discuss enough, they were absolutely dominant even at the last election and now are almost a spent force. It's a terrible message to send to people north of the border, especially in jobs which, aspirant people, a good chunk of the working class, people who may not have degrees, but they want good paying jobs, and then lots of high skilled jobs, which Scotland needs more of, jobs in and around the rigs, in and around docks, helping your country to keep the lights on. Those are good things. And the Conservative Party's gone all out and said, we're going to keep going until the last thing's been extracted that's reasonably economically viable from the North Sea. Labour saying we're not going to allow any new licences is one of their few rare blue sea policies between them and the Tories, and I think it's a really bad one.
Do you?
No, it won't surprise you. I mean, as Alex says, is a very active, outside of his job, Conservative. That's his position. But I would say, and I know for a fact, I was on a briefing today with Anas Sarwar, leader of Scottish Labour, talking about the priorities for Scotland, which are based around green energy, not losing... It would be political suicide to put anything forward that's going to lose people's jobs. And the green energy plans and the clean energy superpower by 2030, there's a lot of opportunity in Scotland. There's a very different philosophy around this because Labour want to create jobs, promote economic growth, but also there are environmental considerations. And I think it's very healthy. There is big disagreement about the impacts of that, but Labour do not want to do anything to cost a single job in Scotland. I wouldn't.
You may want to move on, but this debate about jobs in energy plays out as much or more on the left at the moment than it does on the right, actually, because that's why people like the leader of the GMB have come out. The unions have said, well, we might have been with you on these arguments, but where are all these green jobs we've been promised? And in the absence of those, doing things like closing down. I mean, Aberdeen's wealth has come. I mean, it's got a great, proud history. Some may want to move away from it with the legacy of empire and so forth, but its 20th century record of success and economic prosperity comes from our North Sea oil and our North Sea exploration. And it seems to me very foolish, in the absence of large, significant union-type jobs in green energy, which so far haven't manifested. It's having a certainty on the North Sea piece versus a promise which many people think is vanishing or they've been chasing for a long time.
Yeah, and for me, all this green stuff, it sounds lovely. Who wouldn't want to have this wonderful green energy situation? And that's great when the wind's blowing or the sun's shining and you can store all the stuff that you've got. But in the interim, there is a need for things like oil. So why then would you want to be dependent on things like your Russias of the world, etc.? Why wouldn't you want to exploit the natural resources literally under our own feet?
Well, your point about inferring a sort of common sense approach is one that Labour is very pro in the sense of they're not going to grant future licences but are not going to cancel any that have been already granted. And all of this transition to more renewable energy is being done in partnership with the unions and industry. And last week, when Keir Starmer and the leader of Scottish Labour were meeting a lot of people from business, there was a very large degree of enthusiasm to make this work. People on all sides of politics share concerns about jobs, and I can assure you that I don't believe the Labour Party will put anything forward that was bad for people's jobs and prosperity.
I'm really keen that we have more renewables in the future, of course, and it's a vital part of our national future and our global future. But for the time being, it won't be swapping out oil and gas in the North Sea for renewables. It'll be swapping out oil and gas from the North Sea for oil and gas from other countries. That seems pretty foolish to me.
Just briefly, what do you think about winter fuel allowance being means tested?
I think it should be. I think it's mad to hand out money to the wealthy.
What do you think?
Instinctively, I would agree with that. The debate is how would you do it? And there is a mechanism which would be great if GBNews felt like promoting later, where people can donate it already if they feel so inclined. Age UK Oxfordshire.
If you want to pay more tax, if you want to return money to the country, you can write a cheque to HMRC, and guess what? They'll cash it.
Yeah, and guess what? Hardly anyone does that.
No,
it really makes me laugh how many people
do. Some years they get millions, some years they get hundreds of thousands, but some people do.
I always find it fascinating. There's one contributor, I'm sure it's Matthew Stadlin, he comes on my programme all the time saying I'd willingly pay more tax.
Go on then.
Well, I do. I said, well, go on then. There's a mechanism. Go on. Whilst you're in your break, you can sort it out while you're online. They never do. I found it fascinating. Nick says, Michelle, what on earth do you do with all your washing then if you don't use a tumble dryer? Well, you just put it over things to dry, don't you? Surely. Or there was I found a new unit the other day, and it was you could zip it all up, put your washing in there, and it was like a hairdryer that went inside it. It sounds weird. I get it, but it seemed all right anyway. Really, people use tumble dryers all the time. That's what you guys are telling me. You think it's a bit weird. Sally says, "Have you ever been to Hull?"
I have.
Oh, there you go, Sally.
I
thought you'd say no.
actually love Hull.
Do you?
Yeah. The student union there is brilliant.
Do they? I don't know if his nose is growing or not as he says that. I don't know if his fingers are crossed.
One of my best friends from Hull, Tim Knight, lovely guy.
Oh, well, there you go. Hello to Tim if you're watching. Anyway, look, what time is it? You've still got 10 minutes to save your pennies. Hold off using that tumble dryer. You've only got 10 more minutes. Got a lot I want to talk to you after the break. Should we be able to get foreign workers, companies, as easily as they currently do? And do we have a problem with work-shy Brits in this country? You tell me. See you in 2.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, apparently the world's biggest weirdo because I don't use a tumble dryer. Alongside me is the PR guru Kevin Craig and the Conservative commentator Alex Dean. People just cannot get their head around that. I don't use a tumble dryer. I can't get my head around that. Everyone seems to view it as an essential item. Lots of you that are taking advantage in your next 8 minutes of that kind of switch your appliances off to save money. One of my viewers just told me he's going to save £12 tonight because he's got a heat pump. I actually am surprised it's that high, I've got to be honest. Lots of you that are saying that you are going to do this. Currently, you are doing it. A couple of you have said to me as well, you don't buy into all of this this switch your appliances off to get a few quid because you reckon it's covering up for the incompetence of politicians that haven't managed to sort out the energy situation in this country. So why should you, as consumers, you're asking, was you going to come in then?
I was going to say, if we really... this initiative, fine by me, but if we really want to make a difference, think bigger. Rather than just giving people a couple of quid back on a bill that's quite high for not using appliances, why not give people a lot of money if they agree to have a facility in their neighbourhood they might not otherwise have had? If you have a facility, you know, all the way to people who live around Sizewell or whatever, or a new gas plant or a new wind farm, if you live in that area, you should get your energy at a highly subsidised rate or even for free.
Would you agree to that? I don't know, to have something energy, you were just going, are you into that idea or not?
I can see why Alex suggests it, but it's a bit like when the SNP start going on about they want, you know, the money for their oil, and we're actually, you know, I like to keep it national because we're a United Kingdom, nationwide, trying to get these things right.
I respect that, but some people have to live with it next door to them, and if we're trying to convince them to have a new pylon or have a new gas facility or have a new wind farm that lots of people... I've sort of come round to them, really, but no pun intended, but a lot of people find them very ugly. If they're going to have them nearby and they've got the ability to say to their councillor, I don't want it, and to be a NIMBY, you know, one of the ways to make someone be a yes in my backyard is to say you'll get a lower bill as a result.
Well, there you go. Let me know your thoughts on that. Another thing I want to talk to you about tonight is immigration. This topic pops up all the time. What to do about this kind of skill shortage list? Is it grows, it seems to me. It seems by the day. I'm sure it's not that frequent, but it certainly seems that way. Pretty much all occupations, if you ask me, on this. It's things like construction workers to dancers, you name it. And, of course, we'll be familiar by now with the fact that you can bring these people in at 80% discount from the salary here in this country. Now, Rishi Sunak, he is basically facing a lot of pressure now to either rip up this skill shortage list altogether to raise the amount of money that you've got to be earning, etc. What should he do about these foreign workers?
Well, raising the minimum requirement for pay is a no-brainer because it hasn't gone up since it was first introduced over a decade ago. And we've seen, we take all the arguments we think about, inflation and cost of living and rising wages, and whether wages aren't rising fast enough for workers and so forth. So it seems to me obvious that we should raise the rate at which...
So why hasn't that happened?
Well, I think things get introduced and maybe, you know, it was right for the time that it was, but politically it's quite difficult to change things once they're in and inertia takes effect. It's sort of the same thing. They leave our tax brackets where they are and they get the benefits of fiscal drag and therefore we all wind up paying slightly higher taxes because more people get drawn into the higher brackets. If you leave the salary where it is, you get more people coming in the short term for migration to plug the labour shortage, so it can help government in the short term. But it doesn't help them in the medium or long term, not least because a migrant who comes to this country and aspires to do well and wants to work hard, wants to do better and move out of the low-paying jobs that you're talking about, quite rightly and understandably. And what have you got then? A new vacancy in which you have to try and get another new migrant in. So the solution, it seems to me, is that you've got to look at two things at once. We've got more labour shortage than we've had, and we've got more adults of working age not in work than we've ever had before. These two things might be related, and trying to motivate people to work, it seems to me, is part of the solution. Mel Strides, the Treasury's announced a whole set of things like reassessing people rather than condemning them with the soft bigotry of low expectations to say, once you're on the sick, you never come off it. We're never going to try and help you back into a job. We're never going to encourage you. We're never going to come and assess you and see if you're well now. Helping people. There's plenty of people on sick or incapacity benefits who are stuck in their own home but would like to work. And in the online age, why can't we help them? Why can't we help them work from home? It seems to me is a good idea. But the point I was going to make about this short job shortage, we just accept it as gospel when an organisation tells us they've got a worker shortage and we should do more to help them. If you run a shop and you're not selling your product, we might look at you and say, well, if you priced it right, do you need to revisit your advertising? Maybe you need new stock. And when a business says, I can't find the right workers, we say, well, what can government do to help? Rather than saying, are you paying enough? Should you revisit your working conditions? Are you advertising in the right way? It's not all government's fault, you know.
Is that fair?
Is it fair? It's fair to say. I'm not sure if it's totally accurate. I mean, I'm interested that it's many farmers that have, over time, not been able to find the staff they need to basically harvest crops. Then that not happening would exacerbate our own shortages of food supply. And interestingly, this farmer here in question, right? You know, they advertised for workers and just couldn't get the numbers from local Brits. And I think now, you know, it's astonishing, right? 98% of the UK's fruit pickers come, or you know, crop pickers, produce, come from elsewhere around the globe. And it's got worse after Brexit. And
right, but why? So why do Brits? Because I remember in York, I remember this categorically. My sisters used to get picked up at the corner, at the roundabout, in this minibus, off to the farm they went with all the other people. And they used to do things like cucumber picking. I swear, because I got a job in a supermarket. Those people used to do those jobs, Brits. So why are they not doing those now?
Well, I think there's an interesting correlation, I think, between the number of vacancies that Alex quite rightly points out in the workforce and, for example, the number of people who are registered sick in this country and NHS waiting lists. And I think there's a correlation there where if the NHS works better and gets more people through and fit back to work, that might help. I mean, is it just that we're older and that we think the young are work shy now, which is kind of the vibe around this debate a bit, that people don't want to do the tough jobs anymore? I don't know about that.
But it's not a single generational thing. And the farmer you were talking about in this story today, David Simmons, has been farming, his family's been farming that property in Cornwall for 5 generations. And Mr. Simmons says that it used to depend entirely on locals to do their farming, and now Brits don't do it. And he does have an answer to your question, which is Brits have got it too cushy, we're not hungry enough.
Do you think? Do you think that... Because you see, one of the things I think now is young people, and people will go, oh, Michelle, you're generalising, but so many young people now, they see all this daft YouTube stuff, they see people going on, I'm a celebrity now because I sit on YouTube, I'm an influencer, I can earn money this way, that. And then if you say to those people, right, do you want to go out and get your £10.42 as it was minimum wage picking cucumbers, they're going to look at you daft. Because they now can sit there and think, well, no, I want to be famous. I want to be a celebrity. I want to go on reality TV.
Yeah, well, I mean, all I can say is that I, you know, observe in a different number of environments a lot of young people working hard, you know, whether it's part-time jobs while studying, after university. I'm not convinced that there's a generation of people who want to be on I'm a Celebrity or YouTubers, all these new jobs. I think there's still a work ethic. People want to get on. I am really perplexed, though, by the number of vacancies in the workforce currently.
But let's explore why. Because we're not getting to the root of, well, why do we think... So there's loads of vacancies, but people are not choosing to take them. Why?
Well, I mean, it's very regional in terms of where the jobs are, and I think... are they the best? You know, are they the best paid?
Well,
you know,
we've been able to repress, as a left-wing argument for you. We've been able in this country, quite wrongly in some ways, to repress what we pay people for less well-paid jobs because we've relied on migration coming to this country and then remitting home. Very often the worker then goes and leaves the system, and you don't have the same liabilities for pension costs and healthcare, where you incur those costs later in life as well. And we've done that at the expense of training, educating, and encouraging and giving experience to younger people in this country who might otherwise, if the job was paying a little better, go and do it. But the point is, and this is tied up to our productivity stagnation as well, businesses become more productive and your economy becomes more productive when you invest in power, technology and education in different ways for your workforce. And there's been no incentive for business to basically invest in any of those things as long as it can rely on ultra-cheap labour we import from abroad.
One of my viewers, Michelle, says, our whole village used to turn out to dig the farmers' potatoes back in the day. She says it was a real social thing. It really was good. It was not just about the money. She says it was about the interaction, the friendship, the self-esteem, etc. I spoke to someone, a friend of mine, actually. He might be watching, so I will keep his details out of it. He, unfortunately, has had to go bankrupt. And then he told me now he's now on universal credit. He was saying to me, I now get my rent paid, I get a discount on my council tax and a discount on my water. And I was saying to him, so what's your plan then? Are you going to go back to work, or what are you going to... And this is a man that's worked his whole life. And he turned around to me and said, well, now I've got to weigh it up. Is it worth my while now going to work?
I'm asking how old he is.
50, probably 56, okay. 54, 56, okay. Something like that. But he's worked his whole life. He's a grafter. And I hope if he's watching, he might think I'm a bit rude discussing him. But when I said to him, so what are you going to do then? What work? I was really shocked at his answer. Well, now I get my rent paid, my this paid, my that paid. Yeah. So then where is the incentive to go and do work?
Look, So I think in his case, I don't know, I think if that happens to you in your mid to late 50s, you might have done so much before, it might make you think again before going hard back at it in the workplace. You know, being on, support from the government, benefits, universal credit, it's not a desirable place to be. I mean, it isn't. You know, the state's got control over your life. The money's really tight. And I think the idea that's a choice for people who want to be lazy, I'm not convinced. No. Just one thing, Alex, I'll just come to you. I did want to say on your point, Michelle, about reasons for agricultural places and people not doing the fruit picking anymore, is the cost of housing, which in a lot of these communities around the country is so disproportionately high that young people have to leave to get a home.
That's certainly true in Cornwall. You don't have to dispute the notion that it's not pleasant to be on benefits, to point out that there's still a pernicious effect of people, and it happens all in many roles, where people take fewer hours at risk of losing benefits, and that kind of step change, that drop, where people say, if I do another 4 hours work, then I'll get the reduction in benefits will be so significant that I better not. That's a benefit trap that keeps them forever in that kind of environment, and a system that does that is not good.
Yeah, and that threshold, I think it's about 16 hours, and I do think that's something that needs to be explored and unpicked. And I know you say, oh yeah, there's loads of people that wouldn't choose that lifestyle and who wants to live just on universal credit, but there are people that would be on universal credit and then go work cash in hand and play the system. So they're not just living on that little bit of universal credit.
There are people like that, but I mean, there's fraud and criminality with all levels of society in the system. I mean, you know, look, I absolutely think that should be called out, as we should call out corruption higher up the chain.
So let me ask about the Labour policy, because everyone will be familiar with the fact it was all about education. So, you know, in my day, you just went and got work because you needed to pay your way and you just wanted to get on in the world. Then this education, everyone goes to university, go and get all your degrees and all the rest of it. Do you think that there was an unintended consequence of shoving everyone or many people into university that almost gave people this kind of mindset that I'm too good for that menial job over there because I've got a degree in nonsense and I'm now too good to do the fruit picking?
A degree in nonsense.
Well, some of them are pretty much a degree in nonsense, actually. I can't lie, yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, there was a really, in my view, a very welcome focus on education in the Blair years, which is where you quote that slogan from. Is there now a move back in all political parties to the value of vocational education?
No, my question is, was that policy, do you think that one of the unintended consequences of that policy to get everyone university educated was that a lot of people then thought, because I've got this degree, I'm too good to do the so-called menial job?
I don't think so, but I don't think we can evidence it either way. I think we can have our views on it. I don't think so, no.
Do you think that at home? Do you think actually a lot of people did go to university and now think they are too good essentially to do, I don't know, your shelf stacking or your fruit picking or whatever that job is? Speaking of the young, do you think that they should have a future referendum about whether or not we should rejoin the European Union? Ursula von der Leyen, she says basically that the young, it's their job, their duty to try and fix Brexit by indeed returning us to the bosom of the EU. Is she right?
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dewbs & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry till 7 o'clock tonight. Kevin Craig and Alex Dean remain alongside me. One of my viewers, Deborah, on Twitter, she's saying, why do the government give benefits in the form of money? Why isn't it in the form of vouchers so that essentially people can only spend it on things like food? Is that a good idea?
I think it's too complicated, that, and yeah, I wouldn't be in favour of that.
Is that a no? Would you be in favour of that, more voucher-style systems?
I certainly see Kevin's point with traditional technology. With modern technology, there may be reasons to look at it, particularly given how adept people are now at using computers and smartphones. But of course, the people who are least well off are the least likely to have such things. So we should always beware some whiz-bang solution that actually doesn't hit the issue that you're addressing.
Yeah, well, keep your thoughts coming in, gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, listen, let me play you this clip from Ursula von der Leyen. I'm sure you'll be familiar with who she is. Take a listen.
Speaking of this European Union, do you believe that Britain could ever rejoin this European Union? Britain? Who? It's a small country with an ambassador sitting right there. It's a small pirate island off the coast of France. UK. United Kingdom. Could it rejoin the European Union?
Ambassador. So, Ambassador, you know my position. First of all, thanks God, with the Windsor Agreement, we had a new beginning for old friends. Very important. And then I must say, I keep telling my children, you have to fix it. We goofed it up. You have to fix it. So I think here, too, the direction of travel, my personal opinion, is clear.
Oh, how they laugh at the hilarious gags about how insignificant we are here. The young people, do you think they should get a chance for a future referendum, Alec?
Well, she's certainly right that they goofed it up. And if by they mean the Remain campaign and the EU, which, of course, gave David Cameron so little in his renegotiation that they couldn't really boast that they'd achieved something substantive when he came back to the UK, then she's spot on to say that they goofed it up. But I would, were we to have such a referendum, I would vote no. I wouldn't want to rejoin the EU. But I may surprise you on the principle of having one. I'm not against that really at all, in as much as I think it's much more intellectually honest than what we've had happening over time in this country since our referendum. The intellectually and morally dishonest approach is to try to undermine the decision that we took and take us in without having another vote. And plenty of people tried to do that. Indeed, that was the explicit electoral position of the Liberal Democrats at the last election. B word to Brexit, just go in again and not have a referendum. And I hate to point it out to them, but they didn't form government after the last election. So the intellectually respectable position is to campaign to rejoin, and if people want to do it, whilst I'd never embrace it, they're perfectly entitled to.
Kevin?
Well, I would just simply say that Ursula von der Leyen can have her opinions, there are a few things to point out. The opinion poll evidence is very clear that amongst young people, they are very strongly in favour of the country rejoining the EU. I don't see us doing that as a country anytime soon. The Labour Party is very keen to move on from the divisions of the discussions around Brexit. There's a very interesting quote, you know, a Labour government, were they to have the privilege of being elected, wants a good working relationship with the EU, but there's not going to be any vote again anytime soon because the British people, wherever you were on the subjects, had their opinion and they made that decision, and it's a bit like not rerunning the Scottish referendum, which I think would be a disaster.
That's right.
You know,
in the next election, no chance, because both, neither of the main and Labour's position now is admirably clear. Not rejoining single market, not rejoining customs union, not returning to freedom of movement. That means you can't rejoin the EU. So Ursula von der Leyen, at least in the next Parliament, whoever formed government, is whistling Dixie.
Simon says, Michelle, we had pretty much 40 years inside of the EU before we voted out. So therefore, in his mind, he says we should not have another referendum until we've had at least 40 years outside of the EU. Evan says, to be honest, Michelle, I consider myself to be young. I'm 26. I voted leave and I would do exactly the same thing. Again, this sentiment that young people, all kind of Remainers, would be challenged, I suspect. Philip says, if Labour win the next election, we will definitely be back in the EU.
I mean, Philip's entitled to his view, but it's absolutely not what Keir Starmer is putting forward to the country. You know, wherever you were on the debate to leave the EU, the British people made their decision. And unlike old Nigel Farage, who said, if it's close, run it again, you know, which I'll keep mentioning until it gets too boring, that's not the proposition, you know. So, Philip, I'm sorry, you know, Keir Starmer said, let's move on.
And by the way, it's Philip saying it about Labour. A lot of people will say now, because David Cameron has now got back into the Tory party in a very key role. He was, of course, many would say, publicly a prominent Remainer. So therefore, many people say that actually the Tories would be trying to get us back into the EU.
No chance. The Conservative Party will not be trying to take us back into the European Union. The Prime Minister, who was a Brexiteer, by the way, is vociferously against it, and our membership is completely against it. But the thing to remember here now is the thing that Kevin's been pointing out, and is absolutely right. Labour's position is against it. And if your viewer thinks that Labour would take us back in, he would have to believe that the Labour Party is lying on such a gargantuan level now. And actually, I, as a Conservative, don't believe that. I think it's corrosive to go around saying people are being disingenuous or dishonest. Keir Starmer and co are people I happen to disagree with profoundly on many issues. I wouldn't vote for them, but I don't think they're lying.
It might be harsh to think that people are disingenuous or lying in politics, but I suspect that many of my viewers will be screaming at the screen now saying we do think that, Michelle, because of the track record of the people that we have in power. What do they promise us versus what do they deliver us? We started off this programme, didn't we, talking about net migration. I'm sure that in the Tory manifesto it was something like, we'll get it down to 250,000. Here we are now at 745,000. But there you go. I'm sure you'll have strong opinions on that coming up after the break. What's going on with Nigel Farage in the jungle? Have you been following it? Why are so many people desperate to be offended? Or if they're not, they pretend that they are because they want to cause problems for other people. Look at that.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion.
Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Kevin Craig, Alex Dean remain alongside me. Lots of you guys getting in touch about the winter fuel allowance. I don't really think there's much kind of, love for the fact that the suggestion of it being means tested, but you are a little bit divided on it. Stephen says, no, it should not be means tested, but it should be tax declared items, so those on higher tax bands end up paying a lot of it back. Lee, though, says, I do think the winter fuel allowance should be means tested. Carl says, energy discounts are discriminating against people who don't have smart meters. And still, many of you are still talking about the fact that I don't have a tumble dryer. Now, have you been watching Nigel Farage in the jungle? Well, I say watching him, he's barely been on it, has he, in recent days? Now, what I found quite interesting, Nigel Farage has almost, if you ask me, he's been nigh on invisible, pretty much invisible in the last few days. But then last night, something interesting happened. There was all kind of a bit of a storm in a teacup for a few different reasons. The first one was a lot of people are getting really upset about something that Nigel Farage said on a cameo video. Now, if you don't know what a cameo video is, I will just enlighten you. It's basically, I don't know, if you were trying to find a gift for someone's birthday or wedding or whatever, you can use Cameo. It's a system online. You find the celebrity that you want, you tell them what you want them to say, that person records a video and you send it to your mate for Christmas or whatever. The key component part of that is point 2, which is you tell them what to say. Now, Nigel Farage's videos emerge, very suspicious timing if you ask me anyway. He was saying a word, I didn't even realise that it was offensive, but apparently it is. A lot of people are now basically saying that he's a racist. I find it very peculiar because, as I said, you tell the individual what to say, and if you don't realise that something's offensive, then, what? Also, as well, there's this whole row that brewed in the jungle. Let's just have a little quick listen.
My takeaway.
Is it now?
Recreated. And what are you doing in the background? Can you remember? We've got to find the promo shot now. Got the shot.
2002.
Me, sombrero, some maracas.
You is sombrero, but no maracas. We've both got sombreros on.
And candy floss. Right.
Yeah, so that's not the row that was in the jungle. The row that was in the jungle was about Nigel saying you can't dress as a Mexican because apparently it's cultural appropriation, so you might want to make Anna Deck aware of that. What do you think is going on? Because you are PR gurus, you two. When it comes to the brand of Nigel Farage, is this helping him, hindering him, or what?
So Farage has always been a divisive figure, and it's probably most helpful to step back from the individual and look at the principle, which is that in modern society, and it's something we've got to fix, people think that if they can even semi-plausibly claim that something is offensive or they've been offended, then it's game over. You don't even need to analyse what the person said. You don't need to rebut any substantive arguments. They are finished in the realm of public discourse. That is a very unhealthy state of affairs. In fact, I think, generally speaking, that the consequence of offending somebody is that they are offended. And if you have been offended by something that I've said, oh well, carry on being offended. And as for the Mexican thing that you were just showing, which is an interesting example, lots of people who pursue offence will claim that's offensive. Far-left students on campus will say their fellow students can't go out on a night out dressed as Mexicans because it's offensive. Do you know who's not offended? Mexicans.
Well, there you go, Kevin.
Well, yes, agree with most of that, really. But the thing, let's go back to Nigel and Brand. And, you know, you might not like what I'm about to say, right? But this is... the viewing figures this year are down, OK? And the reason that Nigel Farage has not been on screen a huge amount is not, in my opinion, some conspiracy by the mainstream media against, you know, Nigel for his political views. You know, it's also possible that he hasn't been that interesting in there. And, you know, the timing of this row and all of that, you know, it's all very speculative. The show it works because it's funny, controversial and interesting. You know, do I think that people take offence too easily nowadays? Yes. You know, is it, if you're going to have a go at two people dressing up as Mexicans, what about the World Cup? There were loads of English fans, Welsh fans dressing up in the local garb. Is that just fun and getting into the World Cup? Yes. Is it offensive? No. Yeah.
I just think, do you know, when you go on reality TV, and I do speak from experience, you do almost sell your soul to the devil, because what goes on, it's all about the edit. It doesn't matter. You could be the most interesting person, the most boring person, whatever. The person that will control the way that you are seen is the editors, the producers, those kind of people. I just think it's very interesting because you say, Nigel, perhaps it's just been boring. I work with Nigel every day. I can categorically say that one thing I would never describe Nigel as being is boring.
You don't know. You don't know what he's like in there, you know.
Well,
did you see him get his bum out the other day?
I will never unsee him getting his bum out, quite frankly, before I open that can of worms. That is a nice way to end it, that image. Ugh. Anyway, Kevin, thank you for your time. Alex, thanks for yours. Guys, have a nice night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. Thursday will be another cold day. There's still some dry and sunny weather to be had, but we do also have some snow and ice warnings in force for Thursday morning. Across the northeast, we could see some snow showers continuing throughout tonight, but it's across the southwest where this area of rain will push up from the south, bumping into the colder air, bringing some snow to southern areas, mainly across the high ground of Devon and Cornwall, but we could see a dusting of snow as far east as parts of Wiltshire. So potentially some snow and ice out there tomorrow morning. There's also an ice risk across parts of Northern Ireland as well, and it will be a cold start. Once again, a colder start than this morning, tomorrow morning. The snow showers will continue across northeastern areas throughout Thursday. This area of rain, sleet and snow will continue to affect the far southwest as well through much of the day before it does then sink southwards into the evening. In between, though, we've got a good deal of sunshine. It will be feeling cold, though. Temperatures still only reaching 3 or 4 degrees for many areas. Some areas of Scotland sticking with a frost all day. So another very cold start to Friday. Much of that rain has now cleared the south, but we will see some patches of freezing fog around. These could be quite slow to clear throughout Friday. And elsewhere, though, a good amount of sunshine once again. A bit more sunshine to come throughout Saturday and Sunday, and the temperatures could start to rise a little in the south by the end of weekend.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be